Patterson, born and raised in Philadelphia, uptown to be exact.
Are young people responsible for the violence in the city?
I mean, it's a very good question, and I know when a lot of people look at the news or newspapers or viral videos, a lot of what you see is younger people, committing acts of what you would call violence or making the city more dangerous, or what they would say. But I mean, I would have to equate a question like that to is a seventh grader responsible for failing a science test? At the end of the day, his actions did fail the test. He is responsible for that, but it's a lot of factors, circumstances, and situations that led up to that situation. That seventh grader who failed that test, he probably got many situations going on that led up to that. It could be things as far as the lack of resources, as far as good teachers, as far as enough books, as far as internet access at home. You got kids going to schools with poor quality, not the greatest of teachers, but there are a lot of good teachers in public school. But when you have a teacher who has 40-something kids in a classroom and you got 20-something of them acting up, and those other 15 who really trying to do something, I mean, the end result is obvious. You got people who are going to be lacking. You got people who are not going to be getting what they need. It's hard in a city like this for kids to get the resources they need from teachers, from counselors, from family members, even from friends. So I would have to go back and say it's not 100% these kids' fault that he failed that science test. Not 100% of kids' fault that he came out and he beat somebody's ass on the subway coming home. Not 100% his fault that he got locked up in ShopRite for trying to steal some ground beef. I mean, it's a reason for all of it. It's not 100% his fault that he might have broke into your car and took your stereo. That car stereo money could have went to buying his little brothers and sisters some dinner that night. That ground beef could have been for him to take home to cook because his mom's not around and he's hungry. That him whooping somebody's ass on the subway on the way home could have been something that's been days leading up to it from something going on in his home life. So you can't just look at the action and say this person is a monster, this person is an animal, because nobody wakes up like that. It's a progression. It leads up to that, and it boils over, and it becomes problems that either are self-destructive or problems that spill over and they hurt other people. But it's a I wouldn't say so much a systematic problem, but it's a situation where you're dealing with so many different facets, circumstances, and situations that you really have to take an in-depth look at that person and their background and what they're going through before you can 100% say he's guilty, he's the one, it's all his fault. If you look at the news and you watch the news every day, you might have a perception that a lot of the young people in this city are problematic. But I'm sure if you go somewhere and you actually have a one-on-one with some of the young people in this city, they just as fed up with the problems in the city as you are. They just don't have the answers. And we don't have the answers. It's easier to look at the end result because usually the end result is what's most prevalent and present. You can look at that end result and say, he did this and that happened. It's cause and effect. But it takes some time, it takes some empathy, it takes some understanding, and it takes, for you to even give a fuck, for you to go back and deal with a person and look at their situation and get to know them to see how they came from here to there, because when we're all in, first grade, second grade, your teacher says, oh, let's do the paper kids, what you want to be when you grow up. I don't remember myself or nobody else ever writing down, I want to be doing 20 to 40.
Right.
Well, I don't remember nobody writing down, I want to have 3 kids by the time I'm 19 and be stripping to pay the bills. Like, that's not what people strive to be. But circumstances and situations leads you down a path sometimes where you have to do what you have to do to survive. And if you can make better decisions prior to getting to that end point, the odds won't be so much against you. You might have the actual chance to reach your full potential out here in this world. But sometimes we have so many obstacles that trip us up in the beginning that we can't even get that far down the road. So people don't, you know, you ask people sometimes in the city, where you think you're gonna be at in 5 years, 10 years? They just worried about getting through the day, maybe making it to tomorrow, hopefully seeing next week. So it's a different set of circumstances. It's a different thought process, and it's a different way of life. And you really have to get in touch with it to understand it. And you can't. It's not one of them situations you can be on the outside looking in and think you can find the answers. You got to get on the inside with everybody else and get your hands dirty a little bit to find out some real answers to real problems.
The powers that be say, in order for us to really kind of get this whole violence thing in check, there needs to be some type of gun control out here. What's your thoughts on that?
That is what the powers to be say. And I think you would have to start first with, what is your definition of gun control? As far as gun control is concerned, we work backwards from the problem, which is not logical. You know, when you go to your doctor's office, he says, well, what's going on with you? And you tell him what's been going on. And he asks you, well, what's your symptoms? Then you tell him your symptoms. Then he says, okay, and he goes to his team. They concur, they talk a little bit, and they come up with what's the best next step for you to alleviate that problem. That's working in chronological order. That's logical. But with gun control, they seem to focus on the end, which is, let's make the laws tougher and stronger for people who get caught with illegal guns. Let's make the penalties stiffer. And that's not working in logical order. You're working all the way at the end with the person on the streets you found with the gun. Or you should be working at the other end of the spectrum with the people who are making the guns. You got to go in some type of chronological, logical order when you're dealing with these type of problems to get a real result. You stiffening the laws for people carrying guns isn't going to prevent people from carrying guns. When they say in the United States now, it's enough guns for every man, woman, and child to have. Doesn't make sense. So if you want to see a real dent in the gun violence problem, you got to start with the manufacturers. There's no reason why you can make a gun that holds 100 rounds that can go through a brick wall and you sell it to somebody who lives in the inner city. What the hell are you shooting with that type of gun? There's no dares, there's no bears. That gun is specifically being sold to that person to be used on another person. So, I mean, if you want to start with the problem, you got to start where the problem starts and not where the easiest part of the problem is, which is just locking people up with guns and saying we're going to give them 20 years. That's the easy part. Go to these billion-dollar companies and tell them, look, we making some stricter laws and some rules on you guys, and if you don't abide by them, it's going to be some penalties. And then see what happens. And then see if that trickle-down effect can help lower gun violence in cities. But every problem takes a logical step of approach to it. And the step that we're taking towards war on drugs, the step that we're taking towards gun violence, it's not logical. If you want to stop drugs from coming in the country, then you go to those countries where the drugs are coming from and you make some type of infrastructure that doesn't let them in at the rate they come at. You don't just lock the kid up on a corner that has 10 bags on him. You go get the guy who's sending 10 tons of it over, not the person that's selling 10 bags. So every problem takes a logical response and effort to alleviate the problem. When people can understand that and they're ready to start doing that, then you'll probably see some results. But as long as we're taking the easy way out, we all know what happens when you cut corners.
So what do you say to the National Rifle Association folks who say we have a right to bear arms, and if you go to the manufacturers and stop them from making guns, then you take away our ability to have guns? What do you say to those folks? Because they are championing this whole gun issue. You know, their thing is don't take away our right to bear arms because it's in the Constitution.
And that's understandable. And I hear them. They say it's in the Constitution, the right to bear arms. I don't know if it was the Declaration or if it was the Constitution, but that's the same paper that said black people are 3/5 of a person that a white person is. So, in that school of thought, if you want to go off everything that's written down on those pieces of paper centuries ago, then I think you can see some of it was foolish. Some of it was unwarranted, and some of it doesn't work in the society we live in today. I mean, you got cultures who still treat women as second-class citizens, and still, force them to do things that, in today's day and age, you would consider barbaric. You would consider even criminal. So just because something was wrote on a piece of paper 100 years ago, doesn't mean in today's society that it's still the best way to go about it. I know a white man wrote it down on a piece of paper hundreds of years ago, but that doesn't mean it's still the best way to go about it, because if that's the case, we would still be 3/5 of a person. And in some cases, we feel like we do get treated like that. So if that's your only argument to me, is that it's in the Constitution, my right to bear arms, then your argument is flawed from the beginning. You need to give me maybe some better reasoning or some better positioning on why you need to own a gun or why you need to own 10 guns. Because a lot of people who own guns legally, they don't just own one gun to protect their home, or they don't just own one gun to go hunting. They own 10 guns. And they don't want you to take any of them away. And I don't see any reason for one person to have 10 guns.
What can you do to help with stopping some of the violence in Philadelphia?
It's a great question. I mean, it was at one point in time in my life where I was a part of the problem. I'm not saying I'm 100% part of the solution, but I am no more a part of the problem. I don't break the law anymore. I try to reach out to young people in any situation that I can, whether they're in the car with me, maybe they're in my presence, maybe they're with my kids. I got kids that's teenagers. So I try to reach out to them and paint the whole picture for them, because I know a lot of times growing up, I heard the same old thing. We all heard it before. I got into this for the girls, the money, and the cars. That's what we got, girls, money, and the cars, man. Okay, but explain to that person about the money. You got into it for the money. Explain to them, what you had to do for the money, what type of laws you had to break, or what type of heinous acts you had to commit, or regrettable acts that you might have committed for that money. Explain to them, the things that you lost along the way to get that money, whether it had been your ability to walk like me, whether it had been your freedom, whether you might have lost a loved one or a family member, you might even lost your sanity on the way to get that money. Explain to them that whole picture. Don't just let them, visualize and see the side of the money and everybody's with me and we having fun and life's a ball and I'm with my squad and we doing it and can't nobody touch us. It's a flip side to every coin, and if you neglect to look on that flip side, then you're in for a world of trouble. So continue to reach out to them. You want to tell them about the money, you want to tell them about the cars and the women, tell them about the women. Tell them how, conniving and scandalous they can get when it comes to separating you from your money, separating you from your kids, separating you from your family, even separating you from your life, which a close friend of mine did lose his life behind a situation that had to do with his own baby's mother. So if you're gonna express to them about the cars, tell them the flip side about the cars. Tell them, how when you go home at night, you gotta circle your block 3 or 4 times because you paranoid somebody following you home because you got this new shiny car. Tell them, how many times that car might have been shot at, or how you might have been almost kidnapped for that car. And since people can't get to you, now they targeting your loved ones, and people is getting shot and robbed all because you want to go through, a neighborhood that's filled in poverty in a $100,000 car. So explain both sides of the coin to them when you telling them about this life we live in this city that we live in, and the things things that we do, we try to get ahead. Because all of it's not pretty, you know. And if you've been in the street life for a long enough time, you got regrets. You got things that you wish that you hadn't done. And a lot of times we get put in a situation where you don't want to do something, but you have to do it. And you see, a lot of times we set ourselves up, because if you out here, you're getting in trouble at 17, 18, 19, and you got felonies on your record, by the time you 28, 29, 30, and you got kids, and you're ready to say, I'm done with the streets and just be a family man, you can't even go get a good job to provide for them.
Right.
So now you're in a situation where you don't even want to go back to the streets. You hate the street life, but you're forced to. You forced to sell drugs. You forced to rob. You forced to do what you got to do to bring home some bacon, because you done put yourself behind the 8 ball 10 years ago when you was a young person not really knowing what you was doing. And all that leads to problems, and that leads to people going in and out of jail. So when you see somebody standing on a corner that's 40-something years old, that you know been selling drugs since you was in your young teens, and they've been selling since they was 20, believe me, they not in their 40s selling drugs because they want to. They not riding around in that beat up car because they want to. They would much rather be doing something else. But they done put themselves behind the 8 ball for making so many back-to-back bad decisions that literally only thing left to them is this life in the streets. Because people not letting you in their offices. They're not letting you in their jobs. They're not letting you get no managerial positions when you got, you know, lack of education, didn't finish high school, didn't get a GED, felonies on your record. You're setting yourself up. And when you in the midst of the moment when you're young, you don't see it like that. It's because, man, you ain't looking that far down the road. You living for the day. But if you're fortunate enough and you smart enough, you will live long enough to the point where you realize, damn, I set myself back. And I wish somebody would have told me different. Or maybe not even I wish somebody would have told me different. I wish I would have listened. Because we all swear it's not going to be us. But it only takes 30 seconds to change your whole life. 30 seconds. So I think a good amount of people my age feel the same way about it, because most of the people that's my age are still around to be able to talk to you know, not behind some bars, or, you know, you don't got to go talk to their tombstone that's still out here. Most of us started young. We started when we was 12, 13, 14 years old. So by the time we was in our mid-20s, we had kids. And by the time we got to our 30s, we realized, damn, I want my kids to go to school every day. I want my kids to live in a good neighborhood. I want my kids to have all the things that we really didn't have around us when we was growing up, because you realize now all that plays a part in your kids being successful when they grow up.
Any parting words for the people who are watching and listening to this video?
Life is a marathon. No, it's not a sprint. It is a marathon. And sometimes in a city like this, you gotta dream quietly. What I mean by that is, sometimes some of us, dreams are too big for other people to understand or even latch on to. So you gotta dream quietly, because people will shoot holes in your dreams, and they'll knock the confidence out of you, they'll try to knock the wind out of yourselves. So sometimes you gotta dream quietly. And you can never lose if you never give up. You know, sometimes you go through so much and you just feel like, oh, this is all I can take, and you're ready to throw the towel away. When that success and the results you was waiting for will be right around the corner, but you never get around that corner and see them because you done threw the towel in and gave up. So you can never lose if you never give up. You know, sometimes you got to dream quietly, coming from where we come from. And it's a situation of, as I get older, I realize in life, you got people who will run that race with all their heart and focus and energy and run it hard when they see the finish line in sight. And they cross that finish line, you know, and that's a beautiful thing. But a lot of times, being where we come from and who we are, sometimes you gotta run that race just as hard with just as much focus when you don't see the finish line in sight. And that's the difference maker. It's there, you just don't see it yet. But if you keep busting your ass and you keep running that race and you stay focused, eventually that finish line will start coming in sight. So you can't just run hard when you see the finish line. You gotta try to pride yourself on being that person that go hard even when the finish line not in sight. And if you can do that, then you'll get closer to what you know, turning some of your dreams into reality. That's what we all want to do. Turn our dreams into reality. Take care of our families. Not live check to check. Not worry about so much violence. We all want the same things. Whether you from Kensington, North Philly, Uptown, or you from Camden, or you from Atlanta, or you from Compton. We all want the same things for ourselves, for our families, for our kids. It's just how we go about doing them is the difference. How we go about carrying ourselves, and how we go about, you know, passing it forward. Don't get yours, go and leave. Get yours and pull somebody else with you, and tell him pull the next man up. Don't just get yours and leave. So.
Thanks. You know, it takes a lot of courage to talk about your convictions. A lot of people have them, but they decide for whatever reason to kind of keep them to themselves. And I think you're coming out in a video to talk to folks in terms of how they look at what's happening in this city regarding the violence will be very valuable. So we appreciate you. Thank you. And we'll see you again.
You will see me again.